Welcome to the In Love with PMDD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist, and I help you stop the monthly PMDD breakups. PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It is in approximately 1 in 5 women, and it makes you want to break up with your partner approximately 1 to 2 weeks before your period every single month. So as someone who has suffered with PMDD for over 18 years, I dedicated my doctorate practice to helping partners navigate those monthly PMDD breakups with everything from attachment styles, triggers, sensitivity to noise, sensitivity to touch, all of the things that you really struggle with when you're in PMDD. And I also dedicated my dissertation to a phenomenological study of the relationship experiences of partners of individuals who suffer with premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So I'm not just here to help the sufferer, the one who is suffering with PMDD. I am here for the partners as well. So if you need those private sessions, make sure you go to inlovewithpmdd.com and get those tools. So let's get into this week's PMDD trauma transformational tools that is going to help you stop the monthly breakups and stop the suffering and stress in your PMDD relationship. Let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of the In Love with PMDD podcast. And we have Chris back on the podcast show, back by popular demand. Thank you for coming on, Chris.
Oh man, thank you, Dr. Rose, so much for having me. As always, it is a pleasure to spend this time with you on your show. So thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's just jump right in and let's start with updating, because I know it's been a couple of months since my breakup, a couple of months since your breakup. So let's just jump right in with where we are to kind of update everyone on how we're processing everything, dealing with everything, what has come up that we weren't really expecting. I know a lot of that has happened for me. So where are you at right now?
Man, listen, life is great. Life is great. Navigating through all of this has been a tough challenge. Thinking back over things that has happened over the years, I had a lot of questions. I think we talked about it before, but one of the biggest things that I think is a challenge for a partner of someone who suffers from PMDD is trying to separate the real from the fake. Mm-hmm. The real from the intrusive kind of thought process that unfortunately the sufferer goes through. So I've been questioning myself a lot, like, man, was this love real? Was this a real relationship? And then I snapped out of that, yeah, it was. You know what I mean? So right now for me, I'm just getting better every day. And just trying to better myself and kind of get my confidence back and get my emotional intelligence back intact, because it can wreak havoc, on your psyche.
Yeah. Yeah. I call it, I think the phase that I'm in is finding peace after being broken into pieces. That's
Right.
really how I can describe what is going on, because I can definitely relate to that emotional turmoil and just questioning everything, and really having those days of one day you're feeling on top of the world. You're like, I got this. Your confidence is growing. And then the next day you can have a memory and it can kind of take you right back down to that place. And so you're kind of doing that up and down until you get to like a steady, spot where you're like, okay, I'm good here. Like I'm not going down into the depths again. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I can understand that. I mean, so when since you're kind of getting to that point, like, how does that make you feel? Like, are you getting to a place where it's happy feelings? Are you still kind of struggling? Because as the therapist, I don't think anybody asked you questions, Dr. Rose, and I wanted to ask you some questions today.
I love that. Yeah, you're right. I'm normally the one asking all the questions, but yeah, I think for me, it was really, really hard. I would say a couple months ago, because I was questioning my decision. You know, I was getting backlash from my ex PMDD partner about the decision, about his basically saying that he didn't agree with my decision, and kind of like we could have worked it out, and all of these things. And so I kind of, after I had gone through all of last year and before I made the decision, made sure that I did all the things, right? I made sure I tried pretty much everything I could do. But sometimes when your ex comes to you and they say that, you're like, well, is there something else I could have done? You could start beating yourself up and you sort of feel like a failure. I know the biggest thing for me was and my ex even said it. He was like, how are you going to help people to not break up and you broke up? Like that's where he was going. And I was like, like that hurts. It was like twisting the knife. And I'm like, that's that was my deepest fear was that I wasn't going to be able to pull myself out of something that I was easily able to help other people. Like it was so hard for me to go on these private sessions and help them and see the transformation knowing that within my own relationship, I wasn't seeing it and I was forcing it. And I'm like, I'm using the same tools on me that I'm using on my clients, and it's working for my clients, but it's not working for me.
Right. And I'm sure that could be very difficult for you to try to navigate through. So, and again, I applaud you because honestly, you didn't have to tell us that. And I thought that was very courageous that you did tell us. And yeah, I mean, I'm grateful. Like I said, I'm forever grateful for the day that I came across your Instagram page because it has changed my life, and it has really showed me that oddly enough, what I've realized about PMDD is that pretty much everybody kind of goes through the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And honestly, I'm in some PMDD partner support groups on Facebook, and just years of reading their stories sound like they were reading from a book that I wrote.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And sometimes I would kind of, since the breakup, I have beat myself up like I could have did more. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe if I wouldn't, or maybe if she didn't, or whatever the case is. But now I'm at peace more than anything else.
Mm.
Um, I would be remiss to say I didn't miss her. I do tremendously. And it is what it is at this point. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely. I think missing them lets you know that it was real, and it's not, you know, being at peace with the breakup doesn't mean that you're not going to have moments where you miss them, or even, I think a lot of it is missing the future that you envisioned having
Right,
with this person because you put in so much work, you put in so much effort, you endure so much for this like pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So to think that someone just took the pot of gold and you're looking back at everything that you've put up with and you've been through and you fought through, and you're like, I can't believe I did all of that to end up at this point where there's nothing
right,
here.
right. And you know what? And that's a very good point that you make because you know I will be transparent enough to say that the month of the breakup, I think I was experiencing depression.
Mm-hmm.
But the depression is probably not what you guys are thinking. I'm going to tell you what the depression is. The depression is exactly what you just said, Dr. Rose. I was beating myself up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why did I go through this?
Mm-hmm.
Why did I find the therapy? Why did I do the research? Why did I take the abuse only to be at this point now?
Yeah.
And that was the hardest part to digest for me. But I will say that I have digested it at this point because it is what it is. You know what I mean? And you kind of just have to take things for what they are and where they are, and you have to build from them. You know, being in a relationship with someone that suffers from this, it can be tragic. Unfortunately, I mean, as we both know, some people have actually taken their lives behind this
Yeah.
horrific. You know what I mean? And just dealing with that on a regular basis is difficult. But for any sufferers or you know, actual listeners that have PMDD, there's always tools available.
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Rose is a great. You know what I mean? If you haven't invested in any of her classes, do so because tools do help. And for you as the therapist, sometimes your tools won't work for yourself. You may not be the best person to use a hammer for a nail. You might need a different hammer. So I don't want
Yeah,
you to
yeah.
beat yourself up either, because I can understand how difficult that could be to navigate through. So yeah, but I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I am doing pretty good.
I think the similarity between both of us is that it really does take two. And when it's only one that is using the tools and investing and doing the work, it's you can't carry your partner. And I've seen this so many times where, the sufferer or even the partner, actually, I've seen on both sides where they're contacting me and they're saying, I'm willing, but my partner's not willing. How
Right,
can I convince them? How can I, a lot of them are saying, like, I know my partner has PMDD, but they're really in denial about having PMDD. I listen to you. I know what they're going through because, like you said, we're all going through the same thing. It's like we're
right,
mirroring each other. So they're like,
right,
I'm hearing this. This is what I'm living with my partner, but she doesn't want to come and get your services. She doesn't want to use the tools because she's in denial and she's telling me I'm the problem, right? As the partner.
right,
So then they're like, I know I am doing some things to trigger her, like, but I'm not the sole problem. Like there's something
right,
more there, but it's almost like you can't get to the point of fixing anything if you're not even admitting that there's a problem, if you're not admitting that you have PMDD, if you're not doing the research and kind of even listening to an episode to see if anything resonates. It's almost a fear tactic. Like it's like they're scared to even admit it because then you have to sit with that. You have to do something about it once you
right.
admit that you have it.
Yeah, and you know what? I couldn't agree with you more. That's the biggest part. With my PMDD ex, I think she looked up PMDD in the research for sure, but I also don't think she had an understanding of what it does to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was so self-absorbed that, okay, I have this, and this is how I'm going to act. So now everybody's going to just have to deal with it
Mm-hmm.
because there's nothing I can do about it. So if the mind is set on, hey, there's nothing I can do about this, I just have to accept it. Then those are the type of responses that you'll end up get that will ultimately cause your relationships to end because it's going to take two to tango. It took two to get into the relationship. It's going to take two to fight through it. It's going to take two to rebuild. It's going to take two to fix everything. A relationship is based off of two people making a commitment every single day that they wake up that they're going to try to be the best person they can in the relationship. And unfortunately, PMDD robs you of that. And you have to understand the toll that it takes on the person who's dealing with it. Because as the sufferer, you're dealing with things that, I mean, I couldn't even imagine. I'm just being honest with you. And then what's happening to the people around you that you love is it's even more because it is hard, to hear someone that loves you tell you they hate you,
Mm-hmm. I
or hear say, after you say, hey, well, what can I do to make you feel better? And the response is you can die.
mm-hmm.
You, that's very hard to negotiate because you would think nobody would ever say nothing like that. But I'm here to tell you, PMDD will make you say stuff like that. I've heard it. I've lived it. So,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah.
And I think that's the benefit of really hearing your side of everything is that so many times when I'm talking about these tools and I'm talking about what you need to do, because I strongly believe that PMDD is not our fault that we have it, right? So I always tell my
Uh,
private clients, it's not our fault that we have it, but it's our responsibility as to how we react to the symptoms that we have, how we treat the people that are in our lives. And honestly, you know, a lot of PMDD sufferers, you can have children and coworkers and animals and all these things, and you will treat them better than you treat your own partner. Like
right,
you will restrain yourself when you go because you wouldn't have a job, obviously. If you
right,
can't go to work and just talk to your boss any old kind of way, you know what I mean? You
right,
can't just go off on your kids and do that kind of damage and not, have that moment of being like, oh, I went too far and kind of do something to
right,
regulate yourself. So I always say if you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for the people that are around you. And most importantly, do it for your partner who is trying to legitimately support you the best way that they can, But if you push your partner away during a time that they're really trying to help you, there's a lot of damage that's done because they're opening themselves up. They're being vulnerable with you. They're saying, listen, like hands up, I'm not trying to fight you. Like, what can I do? Just tell me what I can do to support you, and I will do it. And so
Yeah.
you're opening, you're putting all your cards on the table. And so to get a backlash from that, that's where the damage is done. Because
Right.
then once PMDD is over, and they're in their follicular days, they're expecting you to still be there and to give them that's like now they're in a place where they're ready to
Receive.
accept and receive the support. And
Right.
they're like, where's that support you were talking about? Where's that love? Where's that
Right.
affection? Where's that validation? I need
Yeah.
that now.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? And that it is difficult. So I'm glad you kind of brought that up. It's very difficult. I'm just gonna put it in plain terms. It's very
Mhm.
difficult for somebody to be nice to somebody that was nasty to them. It's human nature. So, for our listeners today, if you ever are beating yourself up because maybe you wasn't nice to your PMDD partner after they kind of raged out on you, that's a perfectly normal response, and you are not to be held accountable for how you felt. And if you are being made accountable to that, excuse me, if you're not being made to feel that it was okay for you to respond that way, then there's some other things that you need to discuss with your PMDD partner. That's how I feel, because I would often get accused of the silent treatment. Okay, and I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know that the silent treatment could be a form of mental abuse, but I also believe that people need time to heal or accept something traumatic that happened. I think a lot of times for the PMDD partner, the trauma is happening at such a high repetition that we never really recover from it. It's like one long story that you never get to the end of. So it's like, okay, 2 weeks ago I felt horrible. I felt emasculated. I felt unloved, and then you know 2 weeks later I'm supposed to, hey, I'm just great. I'm peachy. Like, it didn't happen. And I think that's the damage that is caused psychologically on both ends. Because on the sufferer's end, I would imagine, wow, why did I treat him or her like that? And
Yeah.
then on the receiving end of it, how am I to move forward and act like that didn't happen? And I think that's the biggest challenge.
Did you ever feel pressure to kind of snap back and act like because you kind of felt like, well, we only have this week or this 2 weeks or this 10 days to kind of have quote unquote good days. So I probably need to snap out of this so that we can enjoy these good days before she goes right back into it.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, at the latter part of our relationship, we had about 9 days. I
Hmm.
mean, and literally in those 9 days, I was trying to be Prince Charming, freaking, let's go on a trip, let's go out to eat, let's do all these things in these 9 days. And it's hard. You know what I mean? I mean, even with intimacy. Yeah, I don't
Hmm.
know if we can talk about that here,
Of
but
course, of course, of course.
even with intimacy, in a relationship, you're trying to fit all of that, including intimacy, into these 9 days, because there's a strong possibility you're going to go 20 days without any intimacy.
Hmm.
And that alone, if there was no PMDD in a healthy relationship, would not be acceptable.
Hmm.
So even with that, it's a lot of things that you have to accept and kind of learn to deal with. And the unfortunate part about a breakup with the PMDD sufferer is, after you found ways to accept all of those things and you look back and this person is like you never knew them after a breakup, it's rough.
Hmm.
It's really rough. You know what I mean? I saw a meme on IG a couple weeks ago, and it was like, it's hard to go from you called this person or talk to this person every day to user not found because they done blocked you on Instagram. You
Mm.
That's rough to deal with, because it's like, did you ever know this person? Like, this person was erased from your world. And I think that for me, in my breakup, the erasing was the harder part. Normally in non-PMDD relationships, you kind of know when the end is coming. It gets kind of weird and awkward, and you kind of, are getting to the end of a breakup. But with the impulsive nature of PMDD, it happens like that. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Never happened.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah. That
that was,
impulsivity is a real thing. And sometimes you second guess yourself. You're like, is this the impulse move that I made in PMDD, or is this a decision that I really had to make? I know I went through that because I was so sure of it when I did it. And then when I started hearing all of these things from my ex PMDD partner, I'm like, was that an impulse move? Did I just do? But then I'm so glad I journal because I need to go back and look and see and all of these things. And I'm like, no, this was a well thought out decision. But I have made impulse decisions before in PMDD, specifically to Amazon. So shout out to Amazon Prime because I wake up and it's like your package delivered. I'm like, what package? Like,
what
what did I?
what? Yeah, shout out to Amazon.
Uh,
I owe Dr. Rose some sponsorship. Okay, did y'all ever see this? If you work for Amazon, we're gonna do a sponsorship for Dr. Rose because y'all done got the best of her. Now we need to return the favor.
I I'm like, oh my goodness. But
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. But I think it's just I know we had talked a little bit about tracking the cycles, right? And really understanding what's going on with you through certain times of the month and what's going on with your partner through certain times of the month. Because even though the PMDD partners who don't have PMDD don't have a cycle, it's almost forcing you to live on a cycle. I just had a client call yesterday and I was talking to a partner and they were like, I'm the same way all month long. I love my PMDD partner. I'm affectionate. I'm this, but I'm forced to go in and out every single week. And it's hard for me to navigate because there's nothing in my body, there's nothing in my mind that's telling me to shift. So I have to go off of the cues of my partner who's suffering with PMDD, and they're not always in a place where they're ready to guide me. So I just feel like I'm lost. So I'm reading the room wrong. I'm reading the mood wrong. So I'm lost.
yeah. So that is very important. And I was often told by my PMDD partner that you don't have PMDD. I do. But the reality of it is I don't have the physical symptoms, but I totally have the mental symptoms because I'm on this ride with you. So every 2 weeks, if you thought that, man, you know what? Gosh, man, my life's going to be a living hell. Well, guess what? 2 weeks later, mine was too.
Mm-hmm.
If the sufferer is like, wow, man, I'm on eggshells. I feel like I'm going to have a meltdown. Well, guess what? I'm on eggshells too.
Yeah.
You don't want to have a meltdown. I don't want to live through a meltdown. You know what I mean? So yeah, the actual physical symptoms, no, a partner wouldn't have that. A non PMDD partner would not have it. But I do think the physical symptoms from it, and you know what? Actually, it maybe you do. I don't know, but I can tell you that for me, every 2 weeks was a problem for me too. I was anxious before it happened. I had my anxiety went up,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that it was coming. So it's never a matter of if; it's always a matter of when. So that's where tracking comes into place. If you're planning vacations, trips, anniversaries, whatever the case is, unfortunately, you need to have a calendar. You know what I mean? And ironically enough, I was looking at my previous trips on Priceline just last night. And I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And I noticed that so many of these trips were, in fact, at very specific times of the month. And I didn't even realize it, but a lot of our trips, we did have PMDD meltdowns on those trips. And I mean, some were in other countries. I mean, it was rough, and then again, like I said, as a male, I don't know much about how it goes. I think I know a lot more than everybody else. But once I realized that the cycle is on a rolling calendar versus a, as we know it as the every month thing, you know, that really kind of messed me up because I'm like, oh, all of the preparation that I've ever done, and you telling me this can happen 3 days before it happened last month, that was a challenge for me. Because that's where it became hard for me to actually keep up with it appropriately. I always kind of knew, I used to almost pinpoint it.
Mm-hmm.
But then, things change in the cycle and everything like that. I mean, your first days of the month could be your last days of the month. Or, 6 months from that, your last days of the month could be your middle of the month situation. And that's the part I didn't understand. So if you're not tracking and you don't have a full understanding of that, gentlemen, then you have to, because if not, you'll think that it's coming and then it'll come way before that. And then you'll trick yourself into believing that there's another problem. When
What do
really,
you mean? But what do you explain to everyone? I know what you mean about the rolling calendar, but because I know I hear the questions, they're like question mark, question mark. What do you mean by rolling calendar?
okay. So with a rolling calendar, that means simply that while these same days are going to occur every month, they're going to happen at a different time of the month as the calendar year rolls on, so to speak, right? So in January, if your PMDD partner goes through PMDD, let's say around the 12th of the month, by the end of the year, that 12th could very well be the beginning of the month. The whole cycle will change. Every year it's going to change because it continuously rolls on. So if guys, if you're out there and you're saying, hey, the 5th every month, this is what's going to happen, or even the 6th, okay, yeah, that could be the case for 3 months. But 3 months later, that 5th or 6th could be the 1st or the 2nd, the 31st or the 30th, the 27th through the 29th. It's a rolling calendar. So it's never going to be the same, especially as the year progresses on. It's actually going to completely change from what it was at the beginning of the year versus what it is at the end of the year.
And that's what makes planning vacations so hard because I remember with my ex that everything was during the last week of the month. So he was like, so we don't have no Christmas. So his birthday was the 25th. He was like, so no birthday for me. Mine was the 29th. So he's in his mind, it's like every time there's anything on the last week of the month, like we just can't do anything. It's like a blackout zone. And then I remember as it rolled on, just like you said, it was like, oh, let's go here. And it was like around the 20th. He's like, no, we can't. Oh, no, 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 we can't because it's
Right.
you're going to be in PMDD. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to be in PMDD. And there was so much frustration. It's like, yes, you are. Like, because
Right.
every time on the 20th you're in P. I'm
Right.
like, no, I'm
Right.
not. Or
Oh,
you have a conversation, and then they're like, you're just saying that because you're in PMDD, and I'm like, I'm not in PMDD. They're like, yes, you are. Like you're lying to me. It's the 20th. You're in PMDD. I'm like, no, actually, it's no longer that. It's now the
right.
15th or something. And they're like,
Right.
what?
You know what? And I do want to say this. One of the things that I did was I never did that. I never, you're in PMDD. No. That to me was like a danger zone.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? At one point in our relationship, she was very, very good at saying, we used to call it PMDD mode. Hey, I'm in PMDD mode. And for me, that said, you know what? Okay, be extra cautious on what you say, be intentional on the love. Don't speak that much. You know what I mean? Just speak when spoken to. You know what I mean? And honestly, that worked out very well for us because that's when I knew, hey, you know what? Okay, maybe I'm going to do the dishes 3 times this week versus 2 or 5 times, or maybe I need to send her to the spa, or whatever. It gave me a awareness that it's on the way. The latter part of the relationship, and this was like years where it just
Hmm.
went out the window because we had got to a point where she told me that I couldn't even talk about PMDD with her. It wasn't something I could bring up. It wasn't nothing. I couldn't even use the verbiage. You know what I mean? And of course I obliged, but I think that with the lack of us talking about it, made it seem like it was okay. And just to be clear, like it's not okay to have PMDD untreated. It's not okay to deal with a sufferer and you're being damaged mentally, physically, verbally, whatever, that's not okay either, you know, and it's a lot to deal with, but it can be dealt with. And there are tools out there that are very helpful. And one of them is yours truly, Dr. Rose.
I'm so glad that you are validating the partner's side of what it is that they're going through and letting them know, because sometimes I think you can get into that confusing mode of what is okay and what is not okay. You know, when I was doing my dissertation and I interviewed so many partners, one of the main things, because I had to do, thematic analysis, like what's the common theme here from all of these different individuals from all races, all ages, all parts of the world, over 30 countries. And they all said that they felt like they had to put their needs on the back burner and they didn't matter. That was the common
Right,
theme. What
right,
I'm going through doesn't matter. Why would I even bring up what I'm suffering with? Because at least I don't have PMDD. Like, I'm looking at my partner that can't get out of bed right now, and I can't go up to them and tell them that I'm waking up in the morning and I'm walking on eggshells. I have anxiety. I'm feeling like I can't focus at work. I'm feeling like I don't want to come home because I'm trying to like now avoid you and PMDD, but then I beat myself up about avoiding you and PMDD because it's like, what kind of partner am I? Like all of these things that they're internalizing, but you're letting them know here today, and you're letting them, it's okay to have those feelings. It's okay to have those responses. It's okay to have those emotions. It's very natural and normal. And you should get to a place where you can express that and get that out versus holding that in, because that's not sustainable to hold that in for long periods of time over the courses of years and years and years of a
yeah,
relationship.
right, yeah, yeah. I agree. Holding it in is, I mean, it makes it worse. As we get older, the effects of stress on your body are long term.
Talk about it.
And I'm just, in all transparency, I've always said, Dr. Rose, I'll be transparent with you. Over the course of my relationship, I developed a heart condition. I have an
Mm.
enlarged aorta, and
Mm.
from constant stress and hypertension, and just always being in fight or flight. You know what I mean? And I would have never known that. Thankfully I go to the doctor quite often, and I share with my doctor how I feel and things of that nature. And if something's wrong, I'm one of the first people to say, well, let me go to the doctor. You know what I mean? Because just imagine living with that. You don't know that it's going on, so maybe your dietary needs are not where they need to be, or you're in a high stressful job and you don't even understand that. I mean, it could kill you. You know what I mean? And stress is something very, very difficult to deal with, especially when you don't even know that you're stressed. Because I didn't think that I was stressed, Dr. Rose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very emotionally aware of myself. I don't react. I'm always kind of like cool, calm, and try to, make everything better. But I
Yeah.
didn't even understand the stress that I was under in my relationship, that I had deemed to myself that, oh yeah, this is a healthy relationship. Toxic. What, people say, you're toxic, you're toxic. And I'm not really into the trendy words. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? I think toxic has been around, as far as in regards to people and relationships, for way longer than it needed to be. I kind of always took the approach of, hey, it's me and you against PMDD. It's not us against each other, you know. But again, with that approach, you still have to have, the sufferer to be in understanding of that, because a lot of times I just feel like, the sufferer just, hey, this is just how I am.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, PMDD can be something that starts, as soon as a young girl starts to menstruate.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you're 12 and now you're 40, 45, 50, yeah, you have been like this your whole life. And you've surrounded yourself with people that's not telling you the truth. And for one thing, for the sufferers that may be listening, A lot of your friends, they're not going to tell you the truth. They're going to validate everything that you say when you call to complain about your spouse. They're going to validate everything that you say when, you call to complain about your boss or whatever your complaints are, whatever your triggers are. Your friends, they're going to validate it every single time because that's just how most people are. Then you come across people, every so often in life, they're going to tell you exactly how you are, not because they want to hurt you, but they want to help you. And if you do become a part of a situation where someone doesn't validate the foolishness that PMDD brings and a lot of the complaints, don't turn a blind eye to them because that person literally could be saving your life. You know what I mean? They could literally be saving your life because that validation, you're getting validated on your dysreality, your dysphoria. Your dysphoria is being validated by your friends, family, and loved ones that don't want to tell you the truth. The truth is that a lot of times when you're calling to complain to people, they're going to validate your dysreality, your dysphoria from PMDD.
That's huge. That is huge. And I know it's hard to hear, but I love that it's coming from you because I know I was reading one of the reviews on Apple Podcasts that one of you listeners out there said that sometimes it's hard to hear a lot of things that we're telling you, but it's coming from a good place. It's coming from a place of supporting you because I will always be that person that I'm going to give you the tools, but I'm going to be upfront and honest with you about what's right and what's not right. And
Right.
so I've seen it from both sides. And I just want to go back a little bit to what you said about that constant staying in that state of constant fight or flight, because that's something that I was going through even post breakup. I was still waking up like, what's going on? Like, are we fighting? I'm like, oh, I'm single. Like I was
Right.
literally,
Right.
and I didn't notice it. And I started questioning myself a lot. I started to overthink things. And one of my friends was like, Rose, like, why are you, questioning your abilities? Why are you questioning your confidence? Like I was struggling with my confidence. So I'm like, is this good enough? Is this okay? Is this? And it was because I was constantly getting criticized in that relationship so much that I was assuming that the whole world was seeing me the way that my ex saw me. And I
Right.
was just like, even after that person was removed, there's this repairing that you have to do to your nervous system to calm it down,
That's right.
to let it know you're
Right.
safe, you're okay, like you're a good person. Like you have to kind of, and I do this with my clients, I give them these mantras because you almost have to, I call it rewiring your brain into
Yeah.
believing what's true about you and
Yeah.
not the things that your ex or your current partner told you in
Right.
moments of anger and frustration and PMDD or whatever it is that they're going through. You almost have to slowly but surely remove that, or else it sits in you and becomes a part of your reality.
That's right. That's right. So, and I think we talked about it before, but I want to touch on it again, specifically for our male viewers. What Dr. Rose is pretty much saying is that cognitive brain therapy is, first of all, y'all can Google it, CBT, cognitive brain therapy. Retraining your brain is one of the things that is, in my opinion, and I'm not a doctor, but it's something that's very necessary for a sufferer to go through because, as Dr. Rose was just telling us, that ultimately, especially when you're receiving that validation, for the sufferer, all of this stuff makes sense. And for the male partners, it don't make no sense to us. I can't speak for the female partners because I would imagine that maybe female partners have a better understanding of the mood swings and the shifts and stuff. But as a male, we don't have a clue. We're a deer in headlights every time. Even me, y'all probably think I'm an expert. Whatever case, I just done a lot of research on this, but I'm going to be honest. I was a deer in the headlights every time. Every single time I had to stop my brain from frazzling. And I had to say, okay, whoa, it's happening again. Okay, let me check the calendar. It's happening. We're here. We're at DEFCON 3. you know, so what's the game plan? And always have a game plan. More than anything else, always have a game plan, because you're going to need one. You're going to have to learn to navigate through this. I would think that if I could have done anything different, I would have taken the time to have a game plan and sit down and talk to my PMDD ex about it. That is the one thing that I will say that never happened. Outside of her telling me, like, we just have to agree that we're never going to break up. Okay. And then 2 weeks later, we're breaking up.
Mm.
And then 6 days later, we're getting back together, So outside of that, that was the only plan. And as you guys can see, that plan didn't work either. You know what I mean? And it's okay. It's okay. I will say that the biggest question that I always get asked is, why did you stay so long?
Mm.
Why did you put up with that? And for me, it was just like, well, this is my person. What do you like? What do you mean? Why did I stay so long? Where else am I gonna go?
Mm-hmm.
And I've always felt that I wanted to be a part of the solution. And I really thought that at some point that would happen, that we would get to a point where, she could hear from me in those moments and I can make it better. I always just wanted to make it better. And as a man, that's tend to be in our nature. We just want to make it better. We want to be supportive. So when you hear that you're not supporting your PMDD partner, it's difficult, because the first thing that I had to do was I was checking myself, like, well, wait a minute, how am I not supporting you? But then I had to realize she can't receive it during those times. I remember her talking about, you've only been there for me through 3, panic attacks. And I'm like, I start doing the calculations and the math, and I'm thinking you've had over 125 panic attacks over a 6-year span, which out of that 6 years, about 3 of those years we lived together. Where do you think I was? But then that's when the reality of the detriment about the disorder, kind of pops into fruition, because it's dark. I talked on the last show about the horrific research that I found out that shows that, again, women who suffer from this, it'll be 8.5 to 12 years, 12 years of time that there's no recollection for. Like, it never happened. It never happened. And for me, that was one of the most alarming things that I found out about PMDD. And it also broke my heart, because a part of that made me feel like, well, especially post breakup, like, is it possible that our whole relationship could be dark and it never even happened in her world? And that was crushing for me to even think that, you know, but man, yeah, it's, again, I just want more than anything to convey that whatever you're feeling as a PMDD partner is okay, even if you're not getting validated from your PMDD sufferer. Like, it's okay. It's okay, guys. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be hurt. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to express that to other people. Because a lot of times, as a man, we just keep all that stuff in. And when you internalize all of it, that's when you start having health problems.
Exactly, keeping it in. I like what you said about the reality being distorted, and I actually think it can be distorted on both sides, because I know with my ex PMDD partner, he was saying some things and I kind of questioned like you did. I'm like, what do you mean? Like when he's like, I just know if I ever get sick like this again, because I told you he had a health scare, and he was like, I just know that you won't be there for me or you're not supporting me. And I'm just like, I don't know how that happens where it's almost like everything that you did just got erased. Because I'm like, no, I was just here. I just did all, and I list off all of these things. But when you're in that moment of anger or frustration or stress or whatever it is that you're going, whatever emotions you're dealing with, you're almost blinded to the positive sides of your PMDD partner. And that's for both people.
I
You
agree.
almost can't see the good in them. There's this
Oh,
lens, and all you see is like this disgusting creature that you just like putting up with or dealing with. They become a burden, not a blessing. You're kind of like,
right,
I'm just stuck in this and I'm so unhappy because you're this way. And that's like, but that's not who I am. And
right,
that's, you know what I mean? Like it's so distorted. I'm like, what happened to me being the best thing since ever and being
right, right.
amazing and the love of your life to
Yeah,
being a piece of crap?
right, right. Yeah, facts. I couldn't agree with you more. That is hard, and I agree. It again, it's on both sides. There was times when I could look at my ex and be like, man, like you're a monster. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But then I could look at her times and say, man, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. You're the air that I breathe every day. You know, and it's hard, especially when it becomes a every 2 week thing.
Hmm.
Because you got 2 weeks of good, 2 weeks of bad. 2.5 weeks of bad, a week and a half of good, and it's hard. It's hard to navigate a relationship like that.
And I
Yeah,
think it's where, the term gaslighting comes up, and it really talks about distorting someone else's reality, telling somebody that something didn't really happen that happened. But when you're dealing with PMDD, that other person may genuinely not remember, like I just said.
right,
So you're like, you're gaslighting me because I know that I was there for you. I know that you're pretending like I was, but in their mind, you weren't there.
right,
So
right.
they are gaslighting you, but in their mind, they're not gaslighting you because
They're
that's
not.
their reality.
They're speaking facts.
Yeah, according to them,
You
perception is
you know what
everything.
I mean? Like, yeah, and again, that's the problem. And truthfully, that was one of the hardest things that I had to accept. I had to accept that my ex's reality was not always real. You know what I mean? And I used to, that was the biggest thing I used to fight. That was the biggest part of the argument because if I'm being personally attacked for something that I know for a fact is happening, but now you're saying that it didn't, and I'm just like, well, what was it? What do you call it? But then I had to come to the reality, like, oh, it didn't happen in her world. It's no different than you go outside and say, today the sky's red, it's red, and then I go look and say, nah, it's blue like it always is. No, 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 it's red. What do you mean you can't see that it's red? Now you're arguing, but again, the reality of it is if that's what you believe, who am I to say anything different?
That's
And
a beautiful tool. That's a beautiful tool.
once I started to take that approach, things were better for me.
Hmm.
I can't speak to her, but for me, I felt better knowing that, okay, today's the sky's red. It is what it is. And just keep it moving. Because a lot of times, in that dysphoria, again, unfortunately, the sufferer, they don't really know what's going on. And that's what makes it so sad. I mean, that's the worst part of it. The raginess that's happening, you don't know until the destruction is over. And you're looking around like, dang, what happened here? And then I think that's where the guilt comes in, like, oh man, I happened here. So
Because you do get the flashbacks. You get the flashbacks of yourself saying the things, of yourself doing the things. And it's almost like watching a movie, watching someone else act out as this character. And you're like, but that's me. And it's kind of like it's not me, it's PMDD. And it's like, but PMDD is still a part of you. You know what I mean? So it's
right.
it's very hard to look at because even you can sound different, when you're in PMDD, like your whole persona is different. So you get
You
to
can't,
that point
and
where it's like,
Dr. Rose, you just said something there. You're right. Like I literally, like when I knew the PMDD was coming, and again, it's something that I can't even describe, but I could almost hear like a sadistic undertone in her voice. She would talk lower. It would seem scary almost, and that's how I knew, like, uh oh, it's coming. I mean, her handwriting would be different during PMDD. A lot of times it wouldn't even be legible, and, she could write something and want me to read it. And I'm like, okay. But I did learn to read it after years. But non-PMDD time, perfect handwriting. So that's what I want more than anything to convey with this piece right now, is that the psychological changes that's happening in the brain are so severe that someone's that's suffering from this handwriting changes. So imagine if the handwriting changes, how many other things are changing. And that's where you have to kind of be open to your PMDD partner ailment. You know what I mean? Because it's actually a change. It's a different person almost. And you have to be able to learn to kind of, if you so choose, to how you're going to navigate it.
And I think sometimes it doesn't, individuals with PMDD don't really get to the point where they want to get help until it gets so bad, until there's like a big blow up, until you're about to break, until your partner says, I can't take this anymore. I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna do like, or until they really realize that they've done something so horrible that they can't take back, that they're like, now it must be a problem. Now you can admit to it. And I always try to talk to individuals before it gets to that point, because I don't want you to continue to destroy your relationship so much to the point where it's broken, and then you're finally ready to get help and get tools. Because I have so many people that reach out to me and they're like, I wish I would have come earlier. I wish I would have tried to get the tools earlier. Now it's almost like, what they put on the divorce, irretrievably broken, like a piece of
Right.
glass. I can't put it back
Right.
together because it's too many pieces.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of like what happened in my case. I mean, I again, I've had zero contact with her, but I know her very well. And I know that at some point she said, you know what, I think I took this too far. In past breakups and us getting back together, she said, sometimes I'd be like, dang, I took it too far. I just gotta roll with it now. We here now, so I gotta see it through. but overall, sometimes you can't take things too far. And sometimes things are meant to not be. And that's just one of the things that, for me personally, I've accepted. You know what I mean? Dealing with someone with PMDD has gave me an overwhelming amount of patience. And I feel that, at the end of every relationship, I take the lessons learned and all the stories. I'm not a harborer on the bad things. I'm not a harborer on everything that went wrong. My PMDD ex was very loving. She was very kind. One of the best people I know to date. She's still one of the best people I know. And I learned a lot from her on the positive side of it. And I think that's another thing that keeps you going, because one of the things that I have learned through just talking to so many people in different groups, and somehow I've kind of become like an advisor almost in some of these groups, is that women that suffer from PMDD, they're very, very good people. And more than anything else, if you're this good of a person, you owe it to yourself to get some help. You owe it to yourself to get some help, because imagine how wonderful you are now. Imagine what it would be if you had the tools to be an even better person. Not even for your spouse, not even for your kid, not even for your career, but for you. And that's the bigger part of it than anything else, because at the end of the day, you can go through a million relationships, ladies. Okay. You can have an avoidant personality type. You can go whatever you want to do, right? But you're still going to have the problem. And if it's unresolved and you're not getting therapy, you don't have any tools, what I can guarantee you, I wish I could zoom in and do a close up. What I could guarantee
I got you.
is that problem is going to repeat itself in your next relationship, the relationship after that, the relationship following that. And until you make a decision that you are more important, it's always going to be a problem. It don't go away. And frighteningly enough, it doesn't get better. It only gets worse if it's untreated. It only gets worse. The closer you get to menopause, if you're not there yet, if you're in menopause, it's going to be worse. Way, way worse. And that's scientifically proven. I'm not just making that up. You can Google it. get on the internet. It's gonna tell you, so you owe it to yourself more than anything else to do something about it. And Dr. Rose has an amazing amount of tools that can help you get through this.
Thank you so much. I got one last question for you. And
Absolutely.
you actually, my last question was the question I was just about to ask you before, was like, what are the lessons that you've learned? But since you so graciously answered that for me, I'll have another last question, which
Okay.
is if we're talking about, because now you're moving forward, if you were going to advise someone that's dating, right? Dating someone who has PMDD, what would you say? Because I know you talked about therapy. What would you say are the staples that you need to keep within the relationship to keep it together?
You know what the first thing I'm going to say? Don't call people when you're upset with your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
Don't call friends. Don't call your family. Don't call and tell nobody nothing. As humans, we always need to vent. I understand that, but understand that maybe 98% of people that you talk to are not going to have a clue of what you're even talking about. They're not going to know about PMDD. They're not going to understand the hot and cold moments, the up and downs. All they're going to hear is your complaints. And then they're going to validate those complaints. And then those complaints then become problems because they've been validated. Then those problems become problems in your relationship. And before you know it, it'll be a disaster. Self-awareness and acknowledging that, in fact, no matter how you think of it in your world, you actually do have a problem. And that problem needs to be, worked on consistently every single day. You have to work on that problem. So if those are the staples for me, if I was to ever do it again, Dr. Rose, and we talked about this, I think that I I know that I could. Let me say that, but the level of self awareness that have to be there, the work in progress that has to be there, all of that has to be something that's very visible, and I would have to know up front. I'm not going to find out another 3 years down the line that, oh, ding, 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 this is it, and first of all, I don't know where y'all located, but I'm gonna be the first to tell you, dating in Atlanta is awful, 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 awful. Like, dating in Atlanta it is wild, y'all. I'm telling y'all right now, it is wild, you know. But that's another show topic. But no, um, those would be the main things for me. Like, you have to be self-aware, and you have to be constantly working on yourself every day so that your PMDD doesn't spill on other people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for
Yep.
coming on this episode. I'm looking forward to having you on again, like I said last time.
I cannot wait. I mean, this is so fun, man. Like, I hope that I'm able to impart some things on some partners um, that are lost or don't have any understanding. I'm an open book. If you guys want to follow me, you can follow me on my IG at Credit Chef Chris. You can inbox me. If you need somebody to talk to, you can Instagram call me. I'm not gonna give y'all my number right away because I don't get your phone number, but I'm here to talk to the listeners and anybody else, because the fact of the matter is, especially from a male perspective, nobody understands this. Nobody understands this. And you end up on an island by yourself. I was on that island for years. For years, I was on that island. So I can't wait for the next show, Dr. Rose. It is my extreme pleasure to be a part of this with you. I never would have thought in a million years that from finding your IG that I would be so graciously welcomed on your show. And I hope that I'm able to impart some things on your listeners. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I will see you next time. We got this.
We got this.
I hope this PMDD episode helped you and your partner in your struggles within your relationship. And if this is something that you know that you need help with and you need further support, individualized support, make sure you're going to inlovewithpmdd.com and you're getting those private sessions to really work through what you're going through in your relationship, specifically in regards to PMDD. And also, I want you to leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. What this does is it helps other PMDD sufferers and partners find this show that can help them get these free PMDD relationship tools. I remember what it felt like to not know that there were tools out there specifically for PMDD relationships. So I want to make sure that you are sharing these tools with others, share them on your social media, share them with people that you know that are also struggling in their PMDD relationships. Until next episode, this is Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist. One more thing, I almost forgot. I now have the Fresh Start PMDD Partners Workbook. What this workbook can do is if you've had past traumatic experiences with your partner, past fights, past arguments, and they keep coming up every single month in PMDD, I created a Fresh Start Workbook so that you can deal with all of the traumatic experiences that have happened in the past in PMDD rage and all of these things so you can stop going through the same cycle again and again and again. So get that workbook. It comes with a video episode of the actual podcast that I recorded on getting a fresh start in your PMDD relationship. So you're not continuing the same cycle again and again and again. So make sure that you get that workbook. And if you need those individualized counseling sessions, you know where to go, inlovewithpmdd.com. Until next time, we got this. Love you.